You don't need all this land, Harper. Your brother has a family to raise. My father's voice thundered across the sunny Napa Valley patio, making the champagne flutes tremble. It was supposed to be a peaceful Sunday brunch, but in our family, peace was always conditional. I set my mimosa down, fingers tightening around the glass. My name is Harper Langston, and at 36, I had spent the last 8 years transforming the rolling hills of my grandmother's vineyard, land she left to me, into a nationally recognized boutique winery. Now, it wasn't just my livelihood. It was my life's work. We're not having this discussion again, I said calmly but firmly, locking eyes with my father. Grandma gave me this vineyard because she believed in what I was building, and I've proven her right. Come on, Harp, my younger brother Logan, ever the golden boy, chimed in from across the table. You live here alone. I've got twins and another on the way. That space would make a great family home. And I've got 20 full-time employees, 5 regional distributors, and contracts with 4 Michelin-starred restaurants, I replied, my voice low and even. This land isn't just a home. It's a business. It's a legacy. Mom leaned in, voice honey sweet and rehearsed. But sweetheart, you're not married. You don't even have children. This place should be filled with laughter, not vats of fermenting grapes. I do have a family, I cut in. Every harvest crew, every tasting room staffer, every client who trusts our label. I've built something real here. Just because it doesn't look like Logan's version of family doesn't mean it's less valuable. That's when Dad slammed his fist down, rattling silverware and silencing birdsong. This isn't about your wine hobby. It's about doing what's right for the family. I stood, my chair dragging against the stone tiles. That hobby helped save this family from bankruptcy when your firm collapsed in 2019. It pays for your vacations. It bought this brunch. You're being unreasonable, Logan muttered, his designer sunglasses perched like armor. My kids need a future. They have one, I snapped, but it's not on my vineyard. Then Dad's face flushed crimson. We've already hired builders. Construction starts next week, right where your cellar is. My stomach dropped. You did what? Mom exhaled, looking anywhere but at me. The deposit's paid. The plans are final. Logan's home goes right over your production facility. I stared at them all, voice cold now. Then you'd better build fast, because the only thing breaking ground next week is a lawsuit. I pulled out my phone, hands trembling, and opened my vineyard security app. Sure enough, a stream of time-stamped footage showed men in polos and slacks, surveyors, measuring and staking flags right next to my fermentation tanks and greenhouse. They'd been on my land, without my consent. Get out, I said, my voice low but pulsing with fury. All of you, off my land. Logan let out a laugh. Don't be ridiculous, Harper. This is happening. The permits are in process. Dad already signed the papers. I turned to my father, Douglas Langston, the man who used to call my vineyard a phase, who thought Logan walking into a cushy management job at 30 made him a hero. If any contractor sets foot here again, I'll have them arrested for trespassing. He stood abruptly, casting a long shadow across the patio. You ungrateful brat, I'm your father. This is family land. No, I said firmly, my spine straight. This is my land, legally, morally, and by every drop of sweat I've poured into it. You need to leave, now. They left, but not before Dad muttered his warning. We'll see about that. I should have known that wasn't the end. The next morning, just after sunrise, I woke to the sound of roaring engines. I ran out barefoot in a flannel robe and froze. My father was in the driver's seat of a bulldozer, tearing through the front rows of my Chardonnay vines. Logan stood by the trellis, pointing out where his future master suite should go, and my mother, calm as ever, was holding a clipboard and directing the destruction. Stop, I screamed, sprinting toward them. What are you doing? Making room for your brother's future, Dad shouted over the engine, barely glancing at the ruined vines. Be reasonable. I pulled out my phone and hit record, hands shaking as I filmed every second. Then I dialed 911. You can't call the police on your own father, Mom shrieked, lunging for my phone. Watch me, I snapped, stepping back. And don't worry, it's all on camera. You're bluffing, Logan sneered. I pulled up my security feed and showed them live footage from 4 different angles. Grandma told me to protect this place. Every inch is covered. You've been recorded since last week. In the distance, the sound of sirens rose. Dad shut off the bulldozer. His face went pale. You've gone too far, I said quietly, as 2 patrol cars pulled onto the gravel path. Way too far. As the officers stepped out of their cruisers, the weight of what had just happened finally registered on my family's faces. For the first time, they looked unsure. But I wasn't naive. This wasn't over. The Langstons had always been persistent when it came to claiming what wasn't theirs. And they wanted this land. What they didn't know was that Grandpa hadn't just left me rows of vines and a farmhouse. He'd left me ammunition. The next 2 weeks were chaos. Court filings, interviews with my lawyer, and the press quietly catching wind of a well-known Napa family under investigation for property destruction. My father, Douglas, was charged with criminal property damage. Mom managed to soften the fallout, persuading the DA to offer a plea deal, community service, and full restitution for the crop losses. But while I was deep in legal logistics with my attorney, Martha, Logan blindsided us. He filed a civil suit, claiming he had a right to a portion of the vineyard due to a verbal family agreement. That's how desperate they were. They're cornered, Martha said as she skimmed the filing, but I think it's time we show them what your grandfather actually left behind. I gave her a nod and reached into the back of my office safe. From it, I pulled a weathered leather portfolio, the one I had never shown a soul since the day Grandpa passed. Inside were notarized documents, a revised trust, letters he'd written to me, and even a journal detailing years of manipulation attempts from Dad and Logan. Martha flipped through the portfolio slowly. Are you sure about this? She asked. Once it's in the record, there's no taking it back. This isn't just business. It's your family. They stopped being family the second they tried to bulldoze my life, I said quietly. Grandpa knew this was coming. That's why he gave me everything. On the morning of the hearing, I walked into the Napa County Courthouse and saw them all, Logan, Mom, even my Uncle James, who hadn't been around in years. Mom approached me first. Harper, please, she whispered, hands clasped like a preacher's wife. We can fix this. Just give Logan 10 acres. He doesn't need much. I brushed past her. No words. Then Logan's wife Dana stepped in front of me. Please, be reasonable. Think about the kids. They deserve to learn that trespassing and destruction get rewarded, I snapped. That's the lesson you want to pass on? In the courtroom, Logan's attorney led with theatrics, talking about family loyalty, verbal intent, generational promises. Then Logan took the stand, tears carefully timed, painting me as the villain who tore a family apart over a patch of dirt. If you've ever stood your ground when no one believed in you, don't miss what happens next. Hit subscribe to follow Harper's fight for justice, and stay tuned for the moment that turns the entire courtroom on its head. When it was my turn, Martha called me to the witness stand. Miss Langston, she said, her voice steady, can you tell the court about the day your grandfather gave you this land? I drew in a breath. It was 3 months before he passed. He called me into his study, same chair, same fireplace, same vineyard outside the window, and showed me everything he had prepared. He knew what would happen after he was gone. What do you mean? Martha prompted gently. I reached for the leather portfolio we'd submitted into evidence. This, I said, holding up the first item, is a video recording. It shows my father, my brother Logan, and my mother attempting to pressure my grandfather into selling the vineyard, 2 years before he died. Martha pressed play. The courtroom fell into absolute silence. The screen flickered to life, revealing my family in Grandpa's den, pacing, pleading, Dad, come on. My father's voice echoed. This land could be worth millions if you let developers in. Organic wine is a dead end, Logan added. You need to stop living in the past. Then my father again, firm, dismissive, just sign it over. We know what's best for the family. Objection, Logan's lawyer barked, standing up. This isn't relevant. On the contrary, Martha said smoothly. It demonstrates a long-standing pattern of manipulation and directly supports why Mr. Langston structured his estate the way he did. The judge nodded. Overruled. Continue. Next, I introduced a stack of letters, dozens, handwritten by Grandpa, detailing every manipulation attempt. He had cataloged everything. And then came the final piece. I held up a thick, sealed envelope. "This is a notarized statement from my grandfather," I said clearly, dated 1 month before he passed. In it, he states that the land is never to be divided, sold, or developed, that it belongs to me because I was the only one who shared his vision for ethical, sustainable winemaking. Martha played the accompanying video of Grandpa's declaration. On screen, his voice was calm but resolute. My mother hid her face. Dad's jaw clenched. Logan looked like he'd been punched. But I wasn't done. "There's also a clause," I added, looking directly at them. "If anyone contests my ownership or attempts development, they automatically forfeit their inheritance, including the trust funds Grandpa set aside for Logan's children." That was the bombshell. Logan's face turned to ash. "You knew about this?" Dana cried, standing up. "You knew and still let us go to court?" "I warned you," I said quietly. "All of you, repeatedly, but you never listened." The judge called for order as Logan's lawyer rushed to his side, whispering urgently while Dana attempted to calm her husband. This time, real tears fell from Dana's face. Not for justice, but for loss. Their financial future unraveling. The courtroom recessed. Out in the marble-tiled hallway, I stood by the tall windows, arms crossed, watching my family huddle in silence. Mom shook her head over and over like a scratch record. Dad slumped against the wall, pale and wordless. Logan was on the phone with someone, probably his banker, maybe his attorney, maybe both. Martha gently touched my arm. "They'll withdraw. They have to. If they don't, they lose everything." I nodded, but I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. What I felt wasn't victory. It was closure. They'd finally be forced to acknowledge that this vineyard was mine, that I wasn't just their eccentric daughter who never settled down, that I had built something real, lasting, and worthy of respect. But even then, I knew it wasn't over. Not yet. After Logan withdrew the lawsuit, I hoped they would move on, but instead, they changed tactics. Mom began whispering around town that I had destroyed the family out of greed. Dad gave an interview to the Napa Gazette, painting himself as a wounded patriarch, cut off by a cold daughter who chose land over love. And Logan? His wife Dana posted tearful videos on social media accusing me of stealing her children's future. That's when I knew. It was time. Grandpa's final letter, the one he said to keep sealed unless things ever went this far. "Are you sure?" Mirza asked quietly, the morning of the restitution hearing. "Once you read this, there's no going back." I gripped the aged envelope in my hand. They've given me no choice. The courtroom was full. Reporters, locals, people I'd known since kindergarten, now watching me like a stranger. The whispers were sharp, judgmental. As the judge prepared to finalize the restitution amount for the damage Dad caused, Martha stood. "Your Honor," she said, "before we proceed, my client wishes to submit one final piece of evidence, relevant to both the property damage and the harassment she's endured." Logan's lawyer objected. The judge overruled. I stood, hands trembling slightly, and opened the envelope. The parchment inside fell heavier than it should. "My dearest Harper," I read aloud, voice firm. "If you're reading this, then everything I feared has happened. Your family has tried to take what's yours, just as they once tried to take what was mine. But they don't know what lies beneath this land, something I kept hidden for 20 years. Your father knows about this." The courtroom was silent as I continued reading aloud. "He discovered my research 10 years ago and tried to force me to sell. When I refused, he and your mother began their quiet campaign to discredit my mental capacity, hoping to gain control of the property through legal guardianship. That's why I made sure you would inherit everything. Because you were the only one who loved the land for what it was, not for what it could be sold for. I'm sorry for the burden this knowledge brings, Harper, but you deserve to know the truth about your inheritance and your family's actions. Love, Grandpa. You could have heard a grape drop in that courtroom. I looked up. Douglas Langston, my father, had gone ghost pale. Mom sat frozen beside him, her expression unreadable. Logan stared at Dad like he'd just met him for the first time. Martha stood. Your Honor, we'd like to submit supporting documentation, geological surveys, protected water rights certificates, and private correspondence showing Mr. Langston's attempts to gain control of the property under false pretenses. Dad leapt to his feet. This is a lie. She forged all of it. The documents have already been verified by a third-party forensic specialist, Martha replied calmly. In addition, we have recent email records of Mr. Langston attempting to sell the water rights beneath my client's vineyard to several large beverage corporations. That was the final blow. Dad collapsed back into his seat as the courtroom filled with a wave of stunned murmurs. Public sympathy shifted, visibly. People began to understand the truth behind the years of gossip and manipulation. The judge reviewed the evidence silently, then spoke. I'm ruling in Ms. Langston's favor. Full restitution for the property damage, and a permanent restraining order preventing the defendants from approaching her home or business. Outside, as the sun warmed the courthouse steps, Mom approached one last time. Harper, please. We can work something out, share the profits. As a family. Family? I asked softly. You stopped being family the moment you chose greed over me. She reached again, I pulled back. The land stays untouched. Just like Grandpa wanted. But think of the money, Logan added bitterly. I said. I'm thinking about the jobs this vineyard provides, the food we grow, the people we serve. That's wealth. 5 years later, the vineyard thrives. We've expanded with an on-site learning center that teaches regenerative agriculture. The spring, the one Grandpa protected, still irrigates every row. Naturally. Quietly, sustainably. My family, they moved out of Napa. Their reputations never recovered. Sometimes I get messages from Logan's kids, now teens, curious about the vineyard their great-grandfather once treasured. I invite them to visit, to learn. Not about money, but about values. The land Grandpa left me is more than inheritance. It's a legacy of truth, conviction, and quiet power. Every morning, I walk the rows and whisper, "Thank you, Grandpa." Because the greatest revenge isn't shouting louder. It's growing stronger, while letting the truth speak for itself. If you've ever been underestimated, pushed aside, or told your dreams didn't matter, I hope my story reminded you that quiet strength is still strength. I stood my ground, not just for me, but for every voice that's ever been silenced. If you believe in protecting what's right, drop a comment below. Tell me what you would have done. Tell me if you faced the same. And if this meant something to you, please subscribe. Let's keep sharing stories that prove success isn't about revenge. It's about staying true to your principles, no matter who tries to take them from you.